Good morning and welcome into Morning Drive on YouTube. Well, it is the biggest story of the day. Golf's governing bodies have announced the findings of their Distance Insights project. So let's sum up what the USGA and R&A concluded from their research. Hitting distances and lengths of golf courses have been increasing for more than 100 years. The R&A and USGA believe this continuing cycle is undesirable for the long-term health of the game. They concluded this increased distance results in less variety and less creativity of shot types and less importance of skills such as accuracy. They also found that this made some golf courses obsolete whilst increasing the overuse of water, chemicals and land use to keep up with the growing trend. So from here, the R&A and USGA have outlined their next steps. At this point, they will not be taking immediate action, but will now form committees on equipment standards to conduct a review of both golf clubs and golf balls. They will also assess the potential use of a local rule, which gives an option for organizations to use specific golf clubs or golf balls intended to result in shorter hitting distances. So the buzzword around this debate is, of course, bifurcation, or quite simply put, the idea of creating two sets of rules, one for professionals and one for amateurs. Now, last night we heard from top pros in the game and golf's governing bodies on the idea of bifurcation.
No, I think one of the great strengths of golf over nearly every other sport there is that we can play nearly on the same golf courses, whether you're learning the game or the most talented in the game, and we play by the same set of rules. And we want to stay with that as a principle. But this is a complex problem. Mike and I are absolutely committed to working this through collaboratively with the entire industry. We need to work together on this. I've said, there's a great amount of seriousness in golf, but there's a common theme, which is we all want the game to prosper. And as we do that, we need to think about options, and we're going to need to develop solutions. We're going to need to develop options, and we're going to need to talk about them. And the local rule, as you quite rightly say, which we've used in other cases, gives us other options that will go into the melting pot and how we think about this.
Both organizations are steadfast in the belief that one set of rules is in the best interest of the game. But, I think as we look at this option of a local rule, it's just going to be one of several topics related to distance that we're going to be asking for more input, more data. And I think it's important to note that while it certainly could be used for the elite game, we're looking more broadly than that. This could be an option for all levels of the game.
Whatever it takes to get more people into golf. Why does the guy that's playing for nothing need to go by the same rules as me? I think amateurs should be able to use a belly putter or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just because, the game's just not very entertaining. Let's give them a reason to come out and play.
So definitely two sides to this coin, Robert. Bifurcation, it might seem drastic, but do you think that could be where the game is headed?
Well, if you make a local rule, let's say, and force the PGA Tour, or try to force the PGA Tour to use this, that would essentially be bifurcating. There's a different set of equipment for them as opposed to anyone else. You're giving them the option to not take it, which means the product of the PGA Tour is strong. And a lot of it is because people love to go see a lot of long distance. You put the local rule in place, it's just a way of kicking the problem down the road, let someone else worry about it, meaning the PGA Tour. We're going to give you the option of having a shorter ball, and they're probably not going to take that option.
Realistically, though, they would probably never suggest a local rule without communicating with the PGA Tour and having an agreement that it would be or would not be instituted if they were to do it.
Then if you just write the rule black and white, you dictate what happens instead of giving them the option. You're the USGA, you're the R&A.
Yeah, I think the point is that they don't want to have to dictate. I think the point is they're trying to have this open communication and dialogue with the PGA Tour as it relates to this.
Then if the PGA Tour doesn't take that option, then the main footprint of a golf course, which is the biggest problem really, the amount of land and water it takes, doesn't get addressed and doesn't get taken care of.
But when you look at the PGA Tour statement, they said, yes, we want to work in a unified fashion with our partners, and we've always followed the governing body's rule. Sure. However, they also added, unless it negatively impacts the tour. A local rule in which they would potentially do something with a driver club head or roll back the ball, that to me would negatively impact the tour.
That's why
Fans
I say
are coming
the
out for
tour may
driving
not
distance.
take
They're
that
coming out
option.
for birdies. They're coming out for excitement.
Could. But I would argue, too, that some of the best golf that we've ever seen happened 18 years ago and 45 years ago when we had different equipment, when the ball wasn't going as far. Golf can still be exciting as long as, and within the ballpark that they're going to perform.
I just think the core issue is what incentive does the PGA Tour have to adopt that local rule? That's what they're going to have to figure out.
Or not
Well,
adopt. Right.
right, exactly. If the PGA Tour are capitalizing and if manufacturers are capitalizing on how things are now, the status quo now, then what is that motivation to start dialing things back? And golf is so unique in a way that it appeals from 5-year-olds to the elite to 95-year-olds. So to try and pack everyone under one roof is incredibly difficult. But when you look at dialing the ball back, that's surely something that could only be applied to the professional game. If it was done to the amateur game.
I
Okay.
disagree.
I disagree, too.
I think that you could dial back the equipment issue across the board. And I think it would actually solve more problems than having an individual equipment dictation local rule that would apply to the PGA Tour. I think you would be naive to think that in 20 years that the professional women wouldn't be hitting at 275 to 300 yards as well. When you look 20 years ago, they were playing like they've almost caught up to where the PGA Tour was then. So I think you can't continue to think that it's only going to stop where we are right now. And they have dialed back technology. USGA has changed the groove rule that made it more difficult. They used to have 500cc drivers. They dialed back to 460cc. So there is precedent where you could roll back technology and you could do it across the board. I think the challenge too, if you were to bifurcate the equipment issue, you've got amateurs playing in PGA Tour events. You've got amateurs playing in the US Open. You've got a lot of cross grouping within the game. I think it would be a disservice to have two separate equipment rules.
It's all really valid points, but to play devil's advocate, if you wind back technology in the amateur game, the reason why manufacturers have made the golf club easier to hit and made the ball go further is because golf is really, really hard. And if you want amateurs who play off 20, even 30, or anyone who wants to get into the game, if you make the technology harder to play with, then the growth of the game is not going to continue in the right way.
But let's say you're a mid-length hitter and they take away they put spin back in the ball and take away 5 yards from you, but take away 15 yards from somebody that you're playing with. Yes, you're shorter, but yes, you're also closer to that person, and that's where skill comes in play. Again, if we're talking PGA Tour, which is again the driver of this whole thing, that's where it gets more dicey. And if you can roll back the ball there, there's definitely more skill involved, and there's more side spin involved. That's where it gets to, because the equipment is pretty much maxed out, I think, as far as our launch monitors, as far as our drivers and the COR and the golf ball. But there's no reason to not keep swinging faster. The older ball that I grew up playing, there's a detriment to swinging faster. You lost control of the spin. It kept going up. It kept going sideways. So to tone down your speed was imperative. Nobody would have given up some accuracy for distance. A lot of people said, I got to tone it back a little bit. Now that is out the door. Where the ball starts is where it stays. There's no side spin, too. So the game will keep getting longer, even if they check the equipment as it is and stop it, because there's nothing stopping today's youth from swinging as fast as Cameron Champ or more. So the clubhead speed, just the actual swinging speed will change, and the equipment won't hurt that at all. So the distance is going to keep going up on the tour.
But didn't you read that document and come away with one of their takeaways, which is they don't want to reduce distance at all levels? That to me is a suggestion that they want to go down this route.
Correct.
Of having two
That's
separate rules.
how I read it too. I just don't agree with that path. And to your point, Anna, if you were to take distance away, and I've heard this argument all across social media over the last 24 hours, you're taking distance away, the golf is hard enough. Play a set of tees up. No one's telling you got to play the same tees you were playing with the old equipment.
Yeah.
Move forward. It's going to play the exact same with driver 7-iron in your hand.
Especially the ballparks wouldn't be continuing to expand.
And I think that's the whole point, is you're figuring out a way to keep the game in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I referenced some interviews that we saw from players from back in 2017. It was mainly Justin Thomas and John Rahm who were talking about the fact that players have been anticipating this to happen in the game for a long time now, and they have been expecting some possible changes to be happening with the ball and with the equipment, because they recognise that the longer the time goes on, players will get more powerful, the ball will go even further, and golf will change at full stop. So the fact that the players are anticipating it, would it come as a surprise if something was implemented in the professional game?
It would come as a surprise because we're missing a big elephant in the room, and that's the business of golf ball manufacturing and equipment manufacturing. You know, the biggest companies aren't going to stand for a company coming in, or the USGA coming in and saying, you have to stop all production of the way you're making it. All R&D that you've had up to this point is out the door. Throw away all the materials. We're starting back to the old Bellata golf ball with rubber bands wound on the inside or whatever it may be. They're going to have a lawsuit and a big fight on their hands. So the solution, I think, is simple, but to actually implement it is really complex and difficult.
And I think it might not even affect this generation of players. This is several years down the road, if not a decade or longer, once you get into the potential lawsuits that you're going to have from the manufacturers and the governing bodies.
Genie's
We're looking
out of
at
the bottle,
something
though.
that is a decade or more away. It doesn't even affect even today's PGA Tour, which is going to be 400-yard drives, 140-mile-an-hour swing speeds, 200-mile-an-hour ball speed. That's where it's going.
Yeah, and like you said, it is so difficult because you have to bring all of these parties together. It's the manufacturers maybe dialing back the equipment, but it's then also the courses making them shorter. How realistic is it, this notion of growing the game in the right way? I know the USGA just say they want to have a healthy, vibrant game, but that's very difficult.
It is. I think this is, I think the one thing that has come out of the last 24 hours as we're digesting this report is that we can all agree on the facts, but we can't all agree on how we got here, and how we move forward from this.
Yeah, okay, well, we have got more reaction for the amateur side, and there's still so much to cover, but LT, what have you got?
Exactly, Anna. Well, clearly tons of feedback, opinions flying, coming from both the professionals and the amateur side of the game. So let's take a listen and see what some of the AMs had to say about that possibility of bifurcation.
I think that would be lovely for the amateur side. Of course, the professional side, they need to be held to a different standard than what we are, because they play for money. We play for fun.
Amateurs are not pros, and when you play with a pro, you see a pro play, you realize how far away they are from amateur golfers. Well, I do anyway.
And I could see it speeding up play, making the game more enjoyable. Like the out of bounds rule, I've heard them discuss that one. Instead of having to go all the way back to the tee box, just take your two-stroke penalty and drop it out right there, and let's move on with life.
We've watched the pros all of our lives, and, you understand their rules, and then as far as we're a little different, it might be a little confusing for us.
I think the pros should have a different standard. I don't mind playing to their standard, but obviously there's a lot of things that we can't do that they can.
Some things I think would work, but I like to keep the majority of the things the same as the tour professionals are playing, just so you can say, I play the game the way the tour professionals play.
I mean, it's what we've always tried to do, right? Play like the pros. But what do you think? Pros and amateurs playing by two different sets of rules? Is bifurcation the future of the game? Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to Golf Channel's YouTube page for more. Plus, you can tune into Golf Channel and Morning Drive every day for the latest golf news.